What's going on, everybody? I know y'all may have been waiting a while, but we are finally here. The season finale of season 2 with the Fury and Friends show with none other than Jariel. What's going on, Jariel?
Nothing. What's going on?
You know what? It's good to be here. I'll tell you, there's been a lot going on. We'll get to that. Before we get to that, I want to just let y'all know what y'all got in store for you on the show today. Today's going to be a great one. We're going to be talking about Moon Knight. We're going to be talking about Morbius and the Thor Love and Thunder trailer. We listened to the rise and fall of Mars Hill, so we're going to deep dive into that podcast. And then we've got an excerpt from a great interview I did with Brian Sanders, the author of 6 Seasons of Calling, and a great inspiration to a lot that we do here as a ministry with the Unshackled Network. So I can't wait for y'all to enjoy all of that. So what do you say we get to it? All right? Let's do it. So up first. I don't know. I'm trying to decide if I need to complain first before I get into complain about my exhaustion, the season of life we're in, but I don't know if y'all need to hear all that. But I don't know about you guys. Like, there's different seasons of life that just, can take a lot out of you, right?
For sure.
And I think one of the things that we'll talk about in the conversation with Brian Sanders is the understanding that not everything is for every season. Yeah. And right, each season has a different necessity, like a different way that God might be calling you in action. And I'll tell you right now, I'm in a season that is really heavy and thick with a lot of activity. And and it took me a minute here to realize, this isn't just like a day or two. We are now in a new season, and I need to adjust things to appropriately engage with this season.
Exactly.
And the sad, scary truth, and I mentioned this actually on the podcast of the Good Dad, Bad Dad podcast, which the next episode is going to be coming out later this evening. But the realization for me hit when Larissa and I looked at each other one day. It was like Sunday night of last week. And it was like, wait a minute. It was 8:00. And it was like, who fed Mateo? Like, did you feed Mateo? I didn't feed Mateo. So she's working longer hours. I'm working longer hours. And normally he's asking for stuff. So that helps.
Yes.
But it was just like, wait a minute. So, we need to adjust. But anyway, how's everything in your world?
Sometimes I've been there, sometimes, like you said, you have to adjust. It's not, you fall into a routine because that's how it's been going for a long time, but then you have to like completely shift gears. Like, I started working and I haven't cooked one dinner since I've started working, and I'm like, how did I used to do that? So I need to figure out how this new thing in my life fits into this whole schedule I had going for the last 8 years.
And that's just it. Because so it's taking you a minute to recognize, I now need to change some things. I need to do something a little bit differently in order to appropriately engage with this season. Because I think what we're used to is like we have a way of doing things. Mm-hmm. And then like when life happens, when things shift, we're now just trying to like fit that thing in what we do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always work. No. Depending on the size of the shift, it's like, okay, we actually now need to change what we do.
Yeah. It becomes a new thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking about new things and things being different, I think that's a great segue into the first show, because Marvel has done certain way for a lot of their shows and a lot of their movies. And this one, Moon Knight, it's different. It hits different. It feels different. There's some things that are like, I don't know. And we'll get into my thoughts in a moment. But I want to first hear from Jariel. Y'all, we haven't talked about this yet, other than for me to know that she is not as in love with it as I am. Let's say.
For sure. And I thought that was so funny when you said that. I was for sure you're going to feel the same way I did. And it came as a huge surprise that you did not.
Yeah, not so much. Hey, now I'm as you're talking, I'm actually going to be working on my monitors because they have decided they want to completely go out on me. But can you still see me?
Oh yeah, I can still see you.
Excellent. So we'll just pretend like nothing's wrong here.
Nothing's going on here. Ignore what Armand has going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it was a slow start. I was super pumped because I'm like, oh, I love this actor. Oh, anything Marvel, you know, you could sign me up for almost immediately. And then I'm like, every single episode, we're doing this thing with this guy, and he's just very boring. And I'm not really sure if he's going. I wasn't really sure where they were going with this character. I know there were supposed to be like some mental health element, and I was really excited about that because I feel like discussing mental health is important. But again, I was like, when are we going to move into the exciting territory? So it was interesting seeing the different, you know, character developments, the different villains. I love Ethan Hawke's character. I'm a bit interested in where they're going with that storyline. But I'm also just a little bored. So yeah, I just very boring. But what I will say is the last episode where they got into why he was struggling, why he had the multiple personalities. I was like, oh, you know, I may be taking a shift into I kind of like this. But from start to this last episode, I was like, I'm really getting tired of him arguing with himself. Like, you need to listen to Mark. Mark is clued into what's going on. You cannot fight anybody. Shut up, Steve.
So it sounds like your biggest issue is with Stephen Grant. Is that...
Yeah. Like, you know what Mark can do. Just let him do it. And then it was just frustrating. I was getting so frustrated. But yeah, that last episode, I was like, oh, wow. And I always need a backstory on someone. And then I'm like, man.
Then you're in. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, man, this guy's not this Steven. I like Steven now.
Well, I'm glad episode 5 happened. I will say, I had you know what? Before I move into my thoughts, was there more you needed to share?
No, that was pretty much it.
Okay, because I'm gonna unload when we get to something else. So if you got more on your chest, you need to share.
No, that was it. That was it.
So for me, with Moon Knight, I was I had limited knowledge on him as a character and his whole storyline, but I knew a little bit. And we kind of talked about that in the last time we mentioned this show. Mm-hmm. So I was just excited to discover bits and pieces. I loved how they entered into the beginning of the episode, the first episode with the Arthur Harrow thing. We already talked about it. I don't want to rehash all that.
Yeah.
But like the development of the insanity, honestly, that Mark is dealing with, that was really intriguing to me. The way that you've got the different settings that they're in, like it's unlike a lot of the other places. Like, this is not in America, this is in all the places of the world, and we're really getting to see that more global side of things. That kind of seems more consistent with this phase, I think, in a way, with the Eternals being another kind of like example. And it seems like they're really getting more into this mythological sense of
for gods, sure. There's definitely that going on.
Yeah. So, and as growing up as a kid, I was actually into that. I was into Egyptian mythology. So I think there's that other layer of that too. And I have a history in my past of like having some mental health issues.
Yeah.
So like I'm like, and I didn't have schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder.
Yeah.
Like I was vibing with the fact that, oh yeah, you're not doing great mentally, you know,
Yeah.
and there's that struggle there. And then that episode in the asylum, it wasn't the one called Asylum, which was this last one, but the one before that where you know it looks like he dies and then he's in this mental hospital.
Yeah.
That episode was where they completely sold me on this being my favorite show. Wow. Because now here's a big piece for me. I could not follow where they were going. Like so many times shows are so predictable and I'm just excited when they give me a little bit of I gotta guess. But with that episode, I was like, oh snap.
Like what is going on?
No idea what's gonna happen, what's really happening right now. I'm not even 100% sure.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. Like I'm here for that. And what's going on with this hippo? That's bizarre. Yeah. Like that was a really bizarre end. And I knew at the end of that episode, this show was going to be awesome. And I was talking to Eric, the co-host of the Good Dad Bad Dad with me. I was telling him, I was like, so either from this episode forward, it's either going to be an amazing show or I'm going to actually be really disappointed, depending on where they go from that hippo talk, you know? So, and episode 5 for me did not disappoint.
It didn't. I will admit that. I was like, something's got to give here. And the 5th episode was for me was like, I like this. I like this. All the frustration leading up to this point was worth it because now I get why he is the way he is, and I can accept that. Whereas at first I was just like, this guy is so annoying, and I can't take it one more second. Although, I like that they were touching on the mental health aspect because, like I said before, that was really important. And I felt like it was a way to introduce the topic without like beating you over the head with it.
Right.
But he was still, I was just like, you can't fight.
But he's a man, so he's gonna try.
His wife was a better fighter than he was.
Oh yeah. Layla was out there doing it. She's hardcore. I like Layla. I mean, there's parts of her that I'm like, I don't follow, and she's like, in a lot of ways, I think like, I don't know, brash and ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I like her courage and, you know, her fierceness.
For sure.
I am curious to see, like, are we actually gonna have Moon Knight again? Because he, you know, after he got frozen in stone, it was kind of like we were done with him, it seemed. And it's like, okay, I don't know if that's over or what the deal is. If we're just gonna be dealing with, you know, Mark and Steven from this point forward.
Yeah. And that guy a bad guy, not the actual villain, but the one that
Khonshu?
Like what is his situation? I need a Khonshu backstory.
Because it's and I think that's kind of the flavor that we're getting now more and more. And we talked about this a little bit on the Good Dad Bad Dad podcast of like there being this understanding with good guys and bad guys that we had, where it was like really like all good or all bad, you know, Captain America or Red Skull.
Yes, exactly.
But now there's you know these, well, man, you're like Winter Soldier, or US Agent, or you know, like these blended, or you know, you're looking at a Killmonger and you're like, I get where that came from, or
exactly
Thanos's, you know, root cause was, but I've seen how overpopulation that kills people, and I don't want that, you know, like
I'm trying to save you all.
So now we got, you know, a Khonshu that's like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? He's talking about vengeance, and like Arthur Harrow, even as he goes through his whole sharing of stuff, like it seems like maybe he's got some good motives in there. Maybe, I don't know. But I don't know. But I'm here for it all. I'm enjoying it all, and we'll see where it goes. Going forward. So moving on from Moon Knight, we're gonna get into Morbius. Now,
yes.
I don't know. I don't know if I should go first this time, or I feel like if I go first though, you're gonna feel bad about how you feel. So I'll let's hear from you again, Jario.
Okay.
Tell me about your experience with Morbius.
Yeah. I mean, I think we both know that I am a Jared Leto fan.
Yes.
I've been a Jared Leto fan since my so-called life, back in the way day, right?
I forgot about that.
Yes.
Wow, that is the way back day.
Yeah, so I never get the criticism of him because, I loved him as the Joker. You did not.
I absolutely did not.
What I love about Morbius, now I guess I just don't get the complaints as it was a horrible movie because it kept me entertained. I liked it. I probably was a little biased, not only because Jared Leto fan, but because, and I've told you this before, growing up, I wanted to be a vampire, like hardcore. Like, I did not understand why that could not happen for me. So, I love anything vampire related. Twilight. And I liked how this is probably gonna, play into Blade. It's probably gonna play into Eternals. So I just liked the longevity of it. And I like the storyline. So, what'd you think?
Hated it. Look, where do I start? So I'm gonna take some of what you said, and I'm gonna comment on those in reverse order. I don't want to disappoint you, but we can almost guarantee that it's not going to tie into Eternals or Blade, because neither one of those are going to be created by Sony.
This is true.
So they're in their own world. Now, it may tie into Venom, may tie into Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I think we can definitely say it's going to tie into Spider-Man to some degree because of the end credit scene. It at least in that way had she said, I didn't know you wanted to be a vampire. Yeah, Tammy, that's crazy. Yeah, I didn't know she wanted to be a vampire either. You feel like that should be a thing about people, especially if you're going to be living in close quarters with them. Like,
I mean, take out the whole drink your blood portion.
No,
vampires are awesome.
But you can't take that out because that's like
they get that synthetic blood.
Look, oh my gosh, you would be like, oh Lord, you would be like the love interest in this movie. You would be, oh my goodness, look, so she was a big part of one of the issues I had with this movie. And y'all, we're gonna spoil everything if you haven't already. So this woman, I love her in the beginning because she's, seems like a really sweet, genuine person who's, in it with a quality mission. Yeah. And, Morbius is very frail and, sickly and just a smart guy. And she's clearly, kind of into him and appreciates this about him. And not appreciates that he's sick, but I mean, appreciates, him as a person and looks beyond that. So she's not like the superficial, woman or anything like that. So I love that about her. But then this dude goes vampire and she watches him demolish, bloody style, like a whole ship full of people. And she herself accidentally gets injured as a part of that, wakes up from the coma, and she's making out with this dude.
See, I don't know what's wrong with me, but part of me is like, what is wrong with that?
That's what's wrong with you. I'm sorry, everybody in the comments, y'all, we need to pray for and lay hands on Jariel because that is not healthy.
Like, man, this guy just took all these people out. Wow.
No,
what are we going on?
You're like, oh, he's so hot. Look how he shredded their necks. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't know how any woman can look upon this face and think,
we're looking at the right, not the left.
Okay, but look, the left is there. And maybe that's the bigger conversation here, is how there's toxic people who, no, I shouldn't say toxic people. They ignore red flags. Come on, ladies. No. Talk about a red flag.
Yeah, that's a real red flag.
Like, it might have been a white flag, but then he ate people and their blood poured all over the flag. And now it's red. It's like scarlet red flag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think we both said in real life she probably would not have even been interested in him from the get-go, let alone after he ate people.
And like, I can totally dig that she's like into the guy that is not about looks and he's smart. Like, that's dope. That's cool. He's trying to make a difference. And he was, that's one of the things I did like about it, is his character and the human.
Yeah.
I really liked him. Like, and I liked the heart of him. Yeah. But then I felt like from that point, once the transition happened, I felt like the whole show or the whole movie just lacked soul and heart. I felt like the lifeblood of the film had been sucked clean. Go with that metaphor.
No pun intended.
And like it was like very quickly reduced to a collection of, cool sci-fi moments where he's flying. And like I thought that was cool visually, him flying through the air and all that stuff, but I also thought there was inconsistent artwork on him and the villain, like where some scenes, like, this is cool artwork where it looks like realistic, but then there are other scenes that look like they brought out my kid's Play-Doh. And
I will.
Right, you saw it. See,
like, I'm not really scared of Milo. He was just kind of, his face was just, like,
he was a joke.
Yeah,
this dude was a joke. It felt like, oh, the villain from Jim Carrey's The Mask
exactly
is now out and about, and it's like,
it was like, what a
caricature of a bad guy. And like, I'm sorry, Tyrese, hang it up, bro. Hang it up. I don't even understand. Like, you don't act. You can't. Tyrese can't act.
No.
Y'all gonna try to come for me in the comments, maybe. I don't know. Baby boy, and then quit. But
yeah.
Some of y'all probably like him in Fast and the Furious, but like, look, maybe he can play a role, but not this one.
Yeah, the detectives were very obnoxious.
Yeah, it's just like whack. The other guy's like, I mean, at least I can vibe with the fact that dude's legitimately scared, but I don't know. Like, that was whack to me. I mean, I thought the scene where all the bats at the end was cool, but like, I don't know. It was just so, I enjoyed being out at the movies and having a big bucket of popcorn. But that and the end credit, that was all I needed. And they could have left the rest of that in the hot, steaming pile of garbage. And the worst thing for me about it is that people that I love really loved this movie. It's not even just you. Jonathan really loved it.
It was good. Jonathan's a smart man.
Soy and I are like, for real, bro? For real. And you didn't like the Batman? That's what we say to him. I'm coming for him. I'm coming from all over here. I should stop. I'm putting his business all out in the street.
He's gonna be getting DMs. Yeah. You didn't like the Batman?
Man, I don't know. And by the way, I just recently did a review conversation on the Batman with a friend of the Freedom Story Entertainment channel, Chris Chavez. I will put a link to that in the description. It's not there right now. You might want to check it out. We go deep into it. So the Batman, quality movie that wasn't produced by Marvel Studios. So I'm not just biased. I just like good things.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out why you didn't like Morbius.
See, I'm so judgmental when it comes to this stuff, and I'm hating hard because this is the look I had when I was leaving that theater. I was like, for real, this is what you just showed me.
Oh man.
Okay. All right. I'm done ripping it to shreds. Okay, so we got more fun stuff on the way. And by the way, in the midst of this entire conversation, I had to completely shut down 2 monitors and close one browser and go on to another one. I don't know if I disappeared from y'all's view or not.
You did.
Okay, well, I'm back. I'm glad you were talking and not I at the time. So.
Yes. Like awkward.
Yeah. Way to keep having the show go. So up next, we got a nice little convo we can have about another movie that it's not out yet, but we're excited about the trailer that just dropped. That's Thor Love and Thunder, finally released. I mean, it took forever, but they released the trailer. So let's actually go ahead and watch that together. It's about 90 seconds. See if I can add it to the queue here real quick, because it got booted when I did. It's coming, I promise. I'm gonna sing and dance while it spins. It's just spinning. We got a comment there. There was a
beforehand, and we could have improvised, acted it out.
Tammy said that she's not able to comment right now, but she's multitasking, and it just said that there's something wrong with my broadcast, so it won't bring the video in. Let me try it again. All right, this is fun.
That's what happens when you're live.
Right. Yeah, don't ever know what's going to go down. Oh, who's me first? Said Jaria, you're not the only one.
See, that's my friend Nakia.
Look. All right, you know what, y'all? We're not gonna talk about Thor: Love and Thunder. It's not even coming up right now. We gonna have an extended conversation. I'm gonna give y'all some movie going, like I don't know, a support conversation right now. You're ruining the movie industry. Stop going to the movies. Look, and look. So if this is your friend Nakia, she's right. You're not the only one. She's not the only one. And a lot of people went. Oh, it made a lot of money. Horrible reviews, but made a lot of money.
Yeah,
I don't understand that.
Okay. This is how I felt about the second Suicide Squad. Great reviews, great review on Rotten Tomatoes. I could not understand it. But then I watched it a second time because you and I had a conversation and we tore that movie down. And then I watched it again and I was like, I kind of like this. Like, I won't say.
Here's what this also goes to say. Now, this is bogus for me even saying this. Your reviews no longer count. Because you went from "this is mess, I don't understand it at all" to "I kind of love it."
It wasn't that it was like a good movie. However, it was sheer comedy. So I felt like I saw what people liked about it. Would I watch it again? No, but I had to watch it a second time because I was like, is something wrong with me? Because this has 89% Rotten Tomatoes. So clearly I'm the problem.
No. You were good. And then what happened was you saw the crowd and you decided, I want to be like them.
I can't even that peer pressure is tough.
And so you went into the movie then trying really hard to like it.
Yes.
And so you looked past all of the red flags and you fell in love with a crazy vampire.
I looked past a lot, but I feel like the reviews, at least for Morbius, I feel like anything Jared Leto does, people are always just looking for the negative. When I mean, he's not a terrible actor.
No, he's
Like,
actually great. So
yes,
look. I'm even going to say this because I don't want to feel like I get accidentally lumped into what you're saying. And I don't
yeah,
disagree with what you're saying.
yeah,
I didn't dislike Jared Leto as much
yeah.
in that with the Joker. I just hated that portrayal of the Joker. So like,
Okay,
I mean, the way I just like, I feel like it was just poor writing and they
okay,
gave it to him to do.
yeah.
But I've just been continually impressed when I see Jared Leto. I
Mhm.
just, and each time I'm watching him and stuff, I don't even realize it's him in a lot of
He's
these films.
Yes,
I
he's
saw him in the House of
so.
Gucci, and I was like,
Oh,
oh, that was Jared Leto. I was like,
and
okay.
the little things. Have you seen that with
Oh
Denzel?
yeah, exactly.
So good,
And
so
then
good.
I just saw we just did a trial of Apple TV and we crashed.
Oh,
So
I didn't see that.
if you are a Jared Leto fan and you know
I am.
anything about the WeWork story, do you know anything about WeWork?
That sounds familiar. Was there some sort of controversy?
Oh goodness, we just bought this whole show is changing. So like whatever.
Off the rails.
Derailed, I don't care, whatever. And you know what? We might not even be able to get to the interview if I can't even play the Thor. I might not be able to play the Brandon
Oh.
Sanders interview. I don't even know. We just doing today. So the Apple TV has a show called We Crashed, which tells the story of the WeWork company. Now,
Mhm.
WeWork was it's still actually I believe is in existence, but it's a co-working company where they have spaces, office space that you
Yes,
can rent or lease out, a
yes,
spot, and you go there and work. And part of what they're trying to sell you is not just this space, but like this experience where
yeah.
you are, part of a community.
I know a couple people who do that in real life. Yes.
Okay, yeah. And so it was started by this guy, Andy Newman. I think it's Andy, something Newman. Might not be Andy, but Adam. It's Adam. It's Adam Newman. And he is a very charismatic guy. Oh, this really goes well with the Mars Hill conversation we're gonna have.
Oh.
So he's a very charismatic guy who just like, knows the right things to say to people.
Yeah.
They would say that he has a BA in BS, like he's he can, sell a cup of ice cubes to an Eskimo.
Okay.
He's that kind of guy. And there was a documentary that was done on him on Hulu that was more or less done on the development of this company, but it went from one small space to more and just became
Mhm.
like this crazy billion-dollar, then potentially trillion-dollar company.
Wow.
And then it all came tumbling down when people were recognizing how ridiculous this guy was, how much money he was blowing. They weren't actually making money. They were
Wow.
making it and they were spending it. Like they were celebrating, yeah, we just made, $1.9 billion this year. And it's like nobody knows the 1.10 we spent. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
wow.
And it only really came to light because they went public, or they were trying to go public because they were
Mhm.
a privately owned company. Then they tried to go public, and that's when everybody's digging through the records and like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Why'd y'all do this? Why'd y'all do that? And the culture of the company, man, this really ties into Mars Hill,
Yeah.
was so toxic with just like raunchy behavior and like negative powers and like this whole talk of we are a family, but people are really just exploiting and taking advantage of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they did a dramatization of that story in a
Okay.
series, and it's like a 8 or 9 episode series, I want to say. And I watched that in the past couple of weeks, and because I do that when it's like I'm not sure if I want to actually pay for this. So I'm doing the trial. I'm like, all right, time to binge.
Like I gotta binge this.
I binged Ted Lasso and that. So, Ted Lasso, thumbs up. We Crash, thumbs up. So Jared Leto, it took me 3 episodes before I realized he was the star.
Quality actor.
So I'll give Jared Leto his flowers, but I'm sorry. This movie, it's like you just pooped on my flowers. All that to say, I like Jared Leto. Right?
Exactly. Like, I like him.
Did not like him in this.
Okay. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree on the Morbius.
Okay. And that is a skill of this century that I feel like many are lacking, that we need
for sure
more and more of. Yo, we got somebody on Facebook saying, yo, it doesn't show the name. So shout back with your name, yo. It might be Chewy. Chewy comes in and he says yo over there, but we can never see it. Who it is. So yeah, it is Chewy. He says it's Chewy. What up, Chewy? Hey, while you're there, Chewy, did you like Morbius? Or have you even seen it yet? He probably like, oh, it must be nice to go to the movies.
Answer better be yes.
Oh, he said he can't talk, his voice is gone. Well, good thing you're just chatting, Chewy. Oh no. Oh no. So this is the point where like life starts to try to convince you that you must be wrong. So, and I feel like y'all are all gaslighting me right now.
No, I feel like you're going to have to do what I did with Suicide Squad 2. You're going to just have to go back in there a second time, give it a little once over.
Give it another chance. Give it another chance.
See what you come up with this time around.
Oh, goodness. All right. I'll try again when it comes out, because I am not paying for that. So it better be on something that I currently have, because I'm not getting a subscription for anything.
Yeah.
All right, because I am surrounded by people that enjoyed it. Okay. All right. Let's move past Morbius, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's see what we got up next. Well, we were gonna talk Thor Love and Thunder. Well, we don't have the trailer to show y'all, but I saw it. It looks exciting. Did you? Yep. You saw the trailer already, right, Jorio?
Yep. I cannot wait. I am just I'm looking forward to this year of Marvel films.
Yeah,
and that one especially.
It's like you can tell COVID is like on the back end, because they are just giving it to us,
turning us out. Like, I think the best thing I liked about the trailer is seeing Thor work out and trying to lose that weight that he gained.
Yeah, because I was like, at the beginning of the trailer, I was like, oh man, are we gonna have Fat Thor again? Like, is that what we're dealing with? Couch potato Thor.
He's so funny.
Yeah. So it's good to see him work past. But like the most exciting, the most thrilling part. I mean, so we had the shocking bits of like, I don't know if you knew this, but like there was a reveal of Russell Crowe as Zeus in that. So you kind of just see the back of him there. But like if you're someone who's been tracking on things that they said was coming, he's going to be playing Zeus. Then they also had, oh gosh, I can't remember her name. The Valkyrie. Is it Valkyrie? Is her name?
Valkyrie.
Yeah, Valkyrie. Who's going to be like the king.
Yeah.
And I say that because it's not Queen Valkyrie. It's like literally king. And like, she's suited up. And it's like, oh, that's interesting that they just don't want to call her queen and just, but whatever.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure there's more, conversation to that decision.
Yeah.
But then the big reveal was Jane Foster.
Yeah.
Wielding Mjolnir. So it's like, man, she's worthy, and she worked out.
Yeah, I was like,
talking about working out.
Guns.
I was like, dang, Jane. Okay. Right.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And I like Natalie Portman. I mean, I honestly, I didn't have a preference for her one way or another until the prequels of Star Wars, and she was Queen Amidala, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. You're now part of, like, I'm part of your fan base now. Like,
yes.
Welcome. I'm team Natalie in the same way that Chewie says he's Team Morbius.
Oh, we will convert you.
No, I'm not. You know what? But I will give it a chance again. I will give it a chance again because I will say it's been a stressful season. So I've been in my feelings more than often, more than I used to. So maybe I was in my feelings when I watched that and it was just like, it didn't do it for me, but I don't know. So anyways, any other thoughts on Thor, Love and Thunder?
No, I'm just excited to see how James got this Mjolnir. Like, so exciting. We haven't seen anyone wield that since Captain. So
Yep. And it even still looks like shattered. And then the question there was like, okay, wait a minute, did it come back into pieces, or like how did that come back together? And so we shall see. Lots of questions. All right, so we're gonna go from the lighter side of things now and transition into some more serious conversation as we talk about a pretty deep podcast that came out called the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, you guys. It is it's heavy content. So for those of you who don't know, Mars Hill was a really popular church, specifically in the Seattle area. But if you were someone who I think was paying attention to the larger Christian culture, they were increasingly having a voice through their at the time lead pastor Mark Driscoll. Are you seeing that picture on your screen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's weird. My screen does not show it. This is not a good sign. This is not a good sign, you guys. I still see us. Interesting. No. All right.
Funny.
We're just gonna keep rolling with it.
Yep.
So with him being at the helm, are we seeing it now or no?
No.
Okay, how about now?
Now.
Okay, cool. He was a lead pastor with a lot of charisma, right? And we talked about that with Adam Newman and WeWork, right? You have these charismatic leaders, and he was somebody who was not afraid to say some controversial things, to push some buttons, and to stir people up, and that was part of the sensation, if you will, of him and their ministry, was because he was saying the things that other people wouldn't, and was challenging people, really hardcore, like calling people towards growth, right? And
I think we lost Armand is having some technical difficulties. So until he corrects that, then I guess it's just gonna be me talking about Mars Hill. So to piggyback on what Armand was saying, Pastor Mark Driscoll, he was just this really hardcore pastor. He was mostly, in a way, challenging men through his ministry to be better husbands, to lead their homes. He was very about like masculinity, just you being the head of your home and this is how you run it. And that's controversial, but some people, felt that he was, teaching exactly what the Bible said about, men being leaders of their homes. And what happened, the decline was just, it came so quickly and abruptly for the people in the Church of Mars Hill. It was just all these controversies that kept happening, some public, some private. But then they called Mark to the carpet and confronted him about what he was doing. And then basically within a week, the church had dismantled. So the podcast is about maybe 15 episodes, because there's like a couple bonus episodes in there. But it's just week after week, the host of the podcast speaking to different members of the church about basically the rise and fall of Mark Driscoll, just the ins and out, the how he kind of rose to fame, the people who platformed him, and then it speaks to like the controversies, some of the things that he said that were just way over the top, way out of line, some of the things that he did that were way over the top and out of the line, and then just the really quick decline of the church as a whole. I personally had never heard of the rise and fall of Mars Hill. I'd never heard anything about Mars Hill Church prior to listening to the podcast. I just recall seeing on Twitter, like, everyone talking about it, past and present members discussing it. And I was just like, ooh, this sounds crazy. And it wasn't until like about 3 weeks ago that Armand mentioned it. And he was just like, yeah, let's discuss that. So, yeah, that's what the podcast is about. I don't really have anyone to discuss it with because we are technically not a 2-person podcast right now. So we do have Auntie Tammy in the comments binding the video demons. So I do appreciate that. But also, she also said that she's sad that there are many churches out there that have the same issues. Yeah, I feel the same way. I can't recommend this podcast enough, only just because it was humbling in a way just to know that you could be so far up there and then, just next thing you know, whole ministry just wiped out and in 1 second. And it's just like, how you have to just keep your pride checked at the door. And hey, I was talking with our our co-host Tammy.
Yeah, shit. There we go. The guest host Tammy. Love it.
But I did go on to explain the entire podcast. Good. I didn't have anyone to discuss it with. So yeah, I was just saying how, it was just a lesson in pride for first and foremost, just how you just, man, I was finding myself being like, man, I want to judge this guy so hard, but I can't because that could be me.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I'm definitely been in the judgy mind. So it's good. It's good that you didn't have me here because there's there's a lot. Well, first of all, the reason I got booted, our internet here just completely went down.
Oh,
so, and apparently they reset it in the middle of our show. I didn't even know that upstairs they reset the whole.
They're like, oh, he'll be
like,
fine.
Oh, okay, cool.
He's doing a podcast. It's not gonna matter.
Yeah, wow. All right, cool. Anyways, hey, this is what happens, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what all you said, but
I just described the podcast and then really I was just commenting on pride and then here you popped back in.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot that we could and probably really should try to learn from all that went down there. And one of the things that there's probably like about 5 or 6 things that I would want to at least try to make sure that I walk away from. Like one of those, I think we've talked about in multiple different situations, is accountability. And especially as leaders. And the reason why is because it's easier when you have a leader. Leaders will hold their people accountable, right? And that's part of how they're leading, to make sure that things are getting done and that people are doing as they should and all that sort of stuff. But who holds the leaders accountable?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's the place, that's the rub with this whole thing, where it's like, there's too many situations where that can go wrong. And that's one of the things that I keep trying to make go right in my world, is that there's people in my circle that feel like they can tell me when I'm wrong. You know what I mean? And like that'd be a thing that would actually change the trajectory of a scenario. And I think the situations too often where it's like all the people around you are the ones that you ultimately have this imbalanced power dynamic with. So they don't feel like they can tell you the truth, because if they did, then it's like, I don't know, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my position here? Am I going to fall out of favor with the one who has this sort of, and that's part of, I think, part of what's even improving in our larger context in America is now there's been a allowance of the voices that didn't matter before to now actually have some weight, So that's the thing that we just need to make sure that we get right before things fall apart in different contexts, like organizations and churches and things like that. So we saw that go wrong there
for sure. And I think what was startling was he flat out said he's not submitting to anyone. And the fact that did not send up red flags for people, I was like, I mean, he told y'all. So I don't know why.
and I think this is where you get the core issue may even just be the thing that you're pursuing, like what you're actually pursuing, and getting really clear on what that actually is. Because we can think that it's one thing, but it turns out it's often something else. We can think that it's a God glorifying, it's a God obedient, goal that we're after. But oftentimes it's really a Christianized version of our own ambition and our own desire for more and power and all that sort of stuff. And it's like even the best case scenarios in those so often are like, I want to have this big church and let's have thousands and thousands, because this is where the because is, because I want to reach more people for Jesus. And it's like, I feel like that's great, but if that's the goal, there oftentimes are too many I don't want to say deals with the devil. Compromises. That's the word. Too many compromises that are made at, sacrifices at the altar of this big goal. And it's like, but is that what God said? God didn't just say, go take that mountain. Like God's like, love people, care for the widows and orphans, heal the sick, take these are the commands of, and he said actually that I'm going to build this church.
Exactly.
But we take it like, okay, so now this is what you want. This is going to be the goal. But it's like, that wasn't your goal. That's his goal.
Exactly.
Your goal is the obedience to what he's actually said for you to do.
It was honestly, some parts of that podcast were so hard for me to listen to. It was just like, I could not, it was just, it brought up a lot of like issues that I've had like in the past with churches. And I was just like so heartbroken for a lot of those people, because it's like, you can work for an organization and they beat you up and it's just like, well, they paid me to be here.
Right.
But when you're beat up by the church, it's a whole different situation. And this might be TMI, but I don't really care. But I'm like in therapy right now because of past church hurts. And I'm just like, that's not even something I've ever anticipated for my life. I think people don't realize the extent of damage that can happen from you being in because these people, they're kind of like your family.
Right.
And yeah, it was just
that's kind of the way it's even supposed. Like, as you read the scriptures,
yeah,
that's what you're reading, is this family that God built,
yeah,
But then
yeah,
with the moniker of family, there's so
yeah,
much that's going on that's really just organization,
yeah.
and corporate.
And I can't. I will say, like, I was excited for the end of the podcast to see some of those people like reconcile with each
Yeah.
other, because I'm like, wow, that they went through a lot. Like, I was just half the time my jaw was on the floor.
I mean, it's stuff that you could never imagine.
I'm like, this is a church.
Like, what?
Yeah, I was like,
not even one of those that was like ever considered. Like, we've talked about cults before. Like, when you look at the wind shambling thing, this was not seen as that. And
no,
all the messaging was definitely not all of it, but a lot of it seemed, like above board, and like this is biblical.
Yeah, because I would admit, some of his sermons, I was like, that was pretty decent.
Oh yeah, I listen. I listen to him on a regular.
Like, you know what you're talking about.
Especially as a young man who's like going through the early phases of spiritual formation.
Yeah.
But a lot of his message was like, grow up, man, be a man, and and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Take care of your family. Like, yes. I loved all that.
Yeah.
But I do think there was a shift. And that shift not only happened in him, but it happened in a lot of people that were around him, because they made a decision. He made a decision to go a certain way, but they also made a decision to not call him to the carpet. They just were like, well, we're going to go on this trip with you.
Yeah.
We don't know where you're going, but we're going.
Well, because what they were seeing was he's winning. He's winning. He's winning.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to tuck this under the carpet. We're going to ignore that red flag. We'll ignore that red flag.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We want to be on the winning team. And it looks like he's going out, even though there's so many things and bells and whistles going off in you. It's like, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yes.
Right.
And this is like a sneak peek into Brian's interview, but it was something he said that made me think of the podcast, when he said character comes before the platform.
Yeah.
And he was not displaying that character to have that level of platform.
Right.
And then he just kept being affirmed by these people who did have these platforms. And it just wrecked so many people.
Yeah. We got would you say, what's your friend's name? Would you say this was?
Oh, that's my friend Nakia.
Nakia said you should be able to feel safe at church. You should.
Yes.
Like, this should be the place of refuge.
Yeah.
Right. From the hurts of the world, right?
Yeah.
But yet there's still more people in there, which means there's still more sin in there.
Yeah.
But like if we can't do the work of rooting the sin out of there.
Yeah.
Like, come on. I don't know why we spend so much time fighting over Christmas and whether or not they're gonna say Christmas or happy holidays, and we're too busy like ravaging one another in church.
Yes. Like, what does that matter when you're killing your own people?
Yeah.
Like, you're never gonna win those people.
No, and the world is watching, and like that's the love. Like, they know the message to a degree. Exactly. They know they hear it. God is love, right? And like holiness, and like I don't see none of that. I see y'all, like Tammy said sheep bite and it hurts. Like, y'all see y'all biting each other and killing each other, and like, what?
Yeah.
So we're not gonna go through this thing perfectly, but like there needs to be there. That's why we need to go back to that understanding of accountability, because when we fall, when we make a mistake, when we go the wrong direction, there needs to be a way in which somebody can be held accountable, and not just for the sake of like punishment or restitution.
Yeah.
But in the same way that like Peter went astray and like turned against Jesus, and Jesus like was restoring him so that they could have that relationship again. And so that he can continue to experience the flowing of God's power through him and be used in mighty ways. You know? And
Yeah,
Mm.
it's just I will say I felt like like I said, I felt sorry for those people, but I felt happy for them in the end because a lot of them have seemed to at least acknowledge, like, whoa, we just been through something. It
Yeah.
completely wrecked me, my family, like, but then you see those, people who have like just
Walked away.
really, yeah, walked away and really like repented for their
All
part
right.
in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, because to me, that takes a lot of humility because it's
Like,
like,
I love the story of that executive pastor
yeah,
who like went
yeah,
on a tour of like repenting to people. Like,
yeah,
that's the Bible. Like,
that,
that's it right there, you know?
yeah. And it made me sad that Mark didn't do that, and he just basically went on to start another church. And
Yep.
I was sad for him because I'm like, I don't know what is it gonna take if that whole explosion of that church didn't rock him at all. What is it gonna take?
Yeah. I don't know. Because the lessons he learned there are probably very different than the lessons we're talking about
Yeah,
here.
because and they say he doesn't even preach the same way he preached at Mars Hill. So he knows that at the very least he knows
That's
that's
not the
not
way to
gonna
do it.
work anymore.
Well, that's good then, I guess. That's good at
Yeah.
least.
We can take that as a win, I guess.
But I hope he didn't do a thing, and I don't know enough, and I shouldn't say too much,
Yeah.
but I hope
Yeah.
he didn't do a thing where he's now built it in such a way where there's like no elders or a complete sham board of elders. And I'll tell you, there's too many sham boards of elders out there where, the pastor just picked a handful of people that will be yes men
Yeah.
and let them do whatever they want. And I don't know. There was a thing that Brian didn't say it in our talk, but he said it in a talk at the micro church conference that I was at when he shared, where he said, as we talk about our way of doing church, and we focus a bit more on simplicity. And there was a quote that an author of the book Organic Church, Neil Cole, said that we need to lower the bar on what it means to be the church or to do church,
Hmm.
and raise the bar on what it means to be a disciple. And I was
Mm,
like, yes.
that's good.
But what Brian said in his talk was like, we should focus less on, phrases like simple church and micro church. And he said, what if we called ourselves humble church?
Mm,
And I'm
yeah.
like, because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Because simple, I mean, you can be simple and just flat out wrong and
Yeah.
bad, you know. But humble says a thing of like, it's not about me, and it's
Hmm.
not eyes on me. And there's a sense in which you're submitted to something,
Yeah.
other than you, and that we believe obviously should be to God and his leadership and the
Yeah.
Spirit's leadership. There's too much of the flesh
Hmm.
and too many churches that are chasing things, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, we're gonna do this. And it's not all God like pushing you up the mountain. It's you trying to get whatever the next status
Yeah.
marker is or whatever. And I was listening to another YouTuber that I follow. You guys might like if you like this show, Ruslan. He is a Christian hip hop artist who started a YouTube channel and was on staff at a church and did some preaching a little bit while on that time. And he talked about oh my gosh, I lost my complete train of thought. It's completely disappeared. I was just listening to it this morning. Oh, he was just talking about how he went to a buddy of his church who was trying to chase after these multi-site churches and the mega churches, and that becomes like the model for so many people. And he
Yeah.
said he was at this one service that was supposed to be like a contemporary service, and they had the lights and had like 3 guitarists on their worship team and everything, And then the pastor got up to preach and was going through the announcements first and then preached. And he's on the stage and and then he's like, but bro, there were literally 6 of us in the audience.
Oh.
And it's like, why are you doing it like that?
Yeah.
Like if there's 6 people there and you're actually trying to reach them,
yeah, you've missed your opportunity for intimacy.
Like, hey, let me come down and let's sit and talk and like walk through the Bible and it's like the humility would be like, hey, I wanna get where you are and just connect with you.
Yeah.
Versus like put like out this understanding of this is who we are. And you know, there's the humble church versus the excellent church.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds like really great and really godly. And there's a sense in which they're trying to be with that.
Mm-hmm.
But like that, Jesus didn't come down to demonstrate first and foremost excellence.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah,
he's excellent because he's God.
Yeah.
And guess what? We ain't God and we can try to be God, but he came down to demonstrate humility and love. And I don't know, pick any one of the fruits of the Spirit and make that the marker before the name of your church. You know? Oh man. But
yeah, I that was a deep dive.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And you told me to listen. I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, jaw on floor permanently. Like, I don't even know.
And for a while, like this podcast came out, you know, the fall of last year.
Yeah.
And for a while, I actually steered clear of it because I had done a lot of, I mean, you can tell from a lot of my passion that I share with this, that I had already done a lot of emotional and spiritual work on a lot of the baggage that I had with the church and how the Christian culture is and all that sort of stuff. And I was concerned that listening to this was going to set me back.
Yeah.
You know, and like there was a lot of self-righteousness that I had, and you know, and I'm still even processing through some, but I'm like, no. I think I'm ready. And there was even like I think a healing nature to it where
for sure.
You know, there was a bit of affirmation that, oh yeah, I'm not the only one, or but never in a million years that I imagine it was as wild.
There were several times where I was just like, this is a church.
And the sexual stuff?
Oh my, that whole episode, I was just like, how
There's an episode, you guys, that says something like the things we do to women or something like that. It's entitled.
I was just like, how did anybody go back that next Sunday?
Like the stuff that is being preached from, I don't even feel comfortable saying it here.
No, I can't. I didn't feel comfortable hearing it.
And this is being preached on a stage, like
exactly,
and it's like part of their culture.
Yes, my thought was, what if you attended that church and bought a visitor that Sunday? You know what? Sorry, wrong Sunday.
Let's go to brunch.
Because you know, it's always you bring someone to visit on this Sunday where they're talking about tithing.
Right.
This was so much more uncomfortable.
Way worse than that. Wow.
Yeah, I feel the same way as you. It was very, but also very healing. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
These people can get through that, and you know, but just seeing just how like it not only just wrecked those people who were serving, but their children. Like the son that went to confront him, he was only 8 at the time.
Right. And he's walking around with this legacy of baggage.
Yeah, because of what he saw, what it did to his parents, and
then the people who walked away from God, even that are on the podcast, that aren't even like that now have attached all of that to who God is, and it's like
and that's really the tragedy.
Yeah,
that is the tragedy, because one, you didn't even reach them with the gospel because, you know, They've completely abandoned this thing.
Like, and you weren't really preaching the gospel. It was a whole lot of flesh, like, do better, you suck, do better.
Yeah,
do this, do that.
The one when he was yelling at them, who do you think you are? I was just like, I couldn't have sat there through that because one, I'm either busting out laughing.
Like you're joking, right?
Or I'm so offended where I'm just like, dude, calm down up there.
Yeah.
It was a wild ride. I was thankful for that they did that. And I was thankful for that bonus episode where they talked about, even in the midst of doing that podcast, that they had their own controversy.
Yeah. And see that right there, that's the stuff that we need. You know, because like none of us are perfect.
No.
Like, even as we sit here and we're talking about all that's going on there, like, yo, if something blows up here and then I try to act like nothing happened, like, that's grimy.
Exactly.
That's crazy, you know?
Yeah, it's like you need to practice what you preach.
Yeah. So like I would have loved it, even after all of that, if there was an episode where Mark Driscoll got on and like repented. And was like, you know what? I'm sorry. Like, I clearly went the wrong way. I don't know what I was thinking. And I'm so sorry for all those that I heard and da. You know, like that, because that's how it's supposed to go. Like, there's no version of this where we go through this without sinning. So the question isn't, did you sin? The question is, how much are you repenting? Like, do you have a rhythm of repentance in your own personal life? Yeah, I'm talking to you right now. Whoever's watching this right now, I'm talking to you. Yeah. Do you have a rhythm of repentance?
Yeah.
Because you're straight up sinning. I don't know where. I am. So do I have a rhythm of it? Who am I repenting to? You know, like who challenges me? Who calls me out? You know, we all need that. And that's part of the value of church, of Christian community.
Yeah.
Is that you have people that are in position to love you well. And part of that is calling you out. You know, did you hear that? Part of the love is calling you out when you're in sin. Because it's like that sin is hurting you. Like Mark Driscoll right now he's hurting. He's in pain. His life is not going well until that sin gets removed and like he's repenting of that. And then it's like now healing can come. Like repent to the Lord so times of refreshing can come.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah, no, it was like that. Like I said, it was really upsetting to see that he just moved on and didn't acknowledge. And he could have in his personal time and his personal life. But I think when you've hurt people on that large of a scale, and to, you know, some of those people, they were saying, you know, thinking about committing suicide, like it was a level of hurt that required a public repentance.
Yeah, public sin requires public repentance. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So I think that, at least for me, I was like, well, I mean, it could be me that sin of pride will sneak up on you before you know it, and you're like, man, I'm so grateful for the Holy Spirit for bringing that to my attention, because I'm so like afraid of just being prideful, and then the fall that comes from that.
And see, that's the part that I was afraid of with this whole thing too, is that I don't want to fall. I don't want to walk out of this like feeling like my poop don't stink. And but when I see this, I'm like, okay, all right, do I have my world set up in such a way that like I won't end up like this? That I won't, because I know I can make mistakes, but like who's gonna, like Jariel, for real, you better call me out, sister.
I was like, listen, you're getting your Mark Driscoll on. You better.
Right. I'm for real, you know. So we all need that.
Yeah.
Well, what do you say we try at least to get this interview going? Hopefully, with all of the issues and having to reset, that it'll work here. This was an interview I did with Brian Sanders, who is the founder / co-founder of the Tampa Underground, which is one of the ministries that was really a big inspiration to myself as we launched the Unshackled Network. He also has written multiple books. Do I have them all here? I got a few of them here. Let's see. He wrote. Actually, I think I showed them in the interview, but he wrote at least 4. I'm a big fan of a lot of his stuff, but he's going to talk to us today in the interview about one book, The 6 Seasons of Calling, as he kind of shares a bit of his story, and I ask him some of that. Now, you're not going to see the whole interview right here with the time that we have left. We're probably going to go through about 30-40 minutes of it, but if you want to watch the entirety of it, which is a bit over an hour, there's a link to it in the description below, and hopefully I can now get us the excerpt from that video. So come on, you guys, pray with me here that this plays well. Come on, Jesus.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Freedom Stories podcast. This is a podcast, if you haven't already experienced it, where we spend some time sitting down with different people who are walking along this journey with the Lord, a journey towards progressive freedom, more and more experiences of freedom. So at the heart of every conversation, we are really trying to discern what people's freedom story is, what that looks like for them. And today I am super excited. I get to introduce you guys to a bit of a mentor of mine. I've been watching his journey from afar, learning and reading so much of his life, and now even recently been able to experience a bit of relationship up close and personal. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to Brian Sanders. Brian Sanders is the founder of the Underground network,
right now,
so many different things, working with Cohatch now, and written so many books, man. Come on. This is right. I get to fanboy out a minute. I mean, you guys, before he gets to say anything, I'm going to tell y'all, like, if you can find books that he's written, I would recommend that. And they're all so different and add so much different value. Like I don't even know the full title of this. Christology, Missiology, and the Poor is an amazing one if you're really trying to get into doing ministry in a way that I believe is most faithful to Scripture, that really elevates the heart for the poor. This gives you theology behind that. This book right here, Brian, I know I'm talking a whole lot before you even get to say hi. This book might be like my number 2 book to the Bible. And I don't put it near that in its importance, but it really gave me some real, I think, practical inspiration. I think as I was recognizing another calling that was developing, and we're going to get into that today. And then this, you guys, gets into the practical, nuts and bolts of really trying to do microchurch ministry, which I'm sure we'll talk a bit about. But today we're going to spend a ton of time, you guys, talking about Brian's latest book, The 6 Seasons of Calling, Discovering Your Purpose in Each Stage of Life. And having said all that, welcome to the podcast, Brian.
What's up, man? We are friends now. We're official friends now.
We are. That really warms my heart.
You were so excited.
So let's get into this book. I'm gonna actually read the back because I think it does a great job of briefly, encapsulating it. But it says, okay, so you're always changing. What if your calling changes with you? Let's be honest. For most of us, our calling isn't revealed in a singular moment of divine purpose. That's not how God usually works. We grow, shift, and change over the course of our lives, and God continues to call us. But maybe he's not repeating himself. In the 6 Seasons of Calling, Brian Sanders helps us explore our calling as something ongoing and dynamic, shaped around life's 6 basic seasons. And we are not made to wander aimlessly, but to follow a God who is on the move. Which season are you in? What is God saying in it? Live there, learn its lessons. The next season will have its own calling. And you guys, when I started reading the book, and Brian, maybe I'll really address you. It's a conversation, right? When I started reading your book, it was the first couple chapters, I think, were really they were shaping for me, because I think I've always messed with the idea of calling and come away with something that didn't always look so much as I think a biblical understanding of calling. And you put words to it rather early, and we'll get into each one of the different days. But you kind of put words to it, calling it dynamic, calling it, kind of a thing that is constantly changing and evolving. But actually later on, you said something that for me feels like actually I resonated with this as kind of a foundational thought. On page, let's see if I can find it here. It was in my favorite day because it's the day that I'm in right now, right? You talked about in day 4. Oh gosh, I can't find it now. It's on page 98.
You said, I found my calling is a way of describing a job that seems to fit them perfectly. That's actually, I'm gonna just say it right now. Look, I'll pause it. That sentiment creates a certain pressure on everyone else to find that same sense of job satisfaction in their career. This way of thinking about calling is essentially atheistic. This is to say, we can integrate the notion of calling without a personal God who is doing the calling. Wow. It also attaches the experience of calling to fulfillment. And while I do agree that to follow the will and leading of God for your life will ultimately fulfill you, there is a strong biblical case to be made that it will not always immediately do so. It is more plausible to expect that God will call us to things that are both difficult and unpleasant in the short term. At the height of Jesus' own ministry and calling, he found himself increasingly opposed by his enemies, misunderstood by his followers, and even betrayed by his friends. So it's that thought of it being an atheistic thing. Okay, I'm going to shut up now and get back to the actual interview. Because I couldn't find the
That's not it. I can't find the quote. Here's what you said. Something more or less. You talked about how we have an atheistic understanding oftentimes of calling, of it being like a vocation that you have, and it fits you perfectly. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the cultural or non-biblical understanding of calling in juxtaposition to what we actually see as the truth from Scripture? And then we'll get into your story and we'll go backward to where we probably should have started.
Yeah, it's interesting how certain words really are like Christian. They're come from the Christian story, worldview, whatever. Mm-hmm. But then they get co-opted, by secular culture. I think of the word vision. That's a good example. Like, I don't know, in the last 40 years of leadership literature, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a more important idea than visionary leadership or vision. You need to have a vision, whatever. But bro, if like 50, 60 years ago, if you'd have said you had a vision, they would have like locked you up. That's like you're seeing things, you're hallucinating or something. Yeah. It's just funny how those things happen. And we do believe in vision. We believe in the possibility of God giving us visions, but it's much more mystical of an idea as a Christian. You're thinking it's supernatural. It has to come from God to be able to see the future somehow. It's prophetic or whatever. But then the secular world takes hold of it, owns it, writes about it, claims it for their own, which is fine. I mean, I'm not upset by that. It's not a problem per se, but it changes the meaning, right? So right. Vision becomes, prescience, or good leaders have a sense of where they want to go or whatever, and it ceases to be mystical. Calling is exactly like that. Even a word like calling, which implies in its root that you're hearing something, it's acoustic, right? If I call your name, it's I'm hearing someone call me. So calling implies a caller. It implies some great voice, and yet we've come to use it, and then in turn Christians have sort of reverse defined it from the secular culture to say calling is just like a job you really like, or a job that just fits you really well. So when a person says, I think I found my calling, or this is like a calling, they mean a job where they experience a job or a hobby or a thing where they experience a high level of satisfaction, a high level of fulfillment in it, right? Which isn't wrong. It isn't wrong, but it rips away from it its supernatural meaning, its kind of mystical quality, which is for us And I think the biblical sense of calling is that God knows us each by name, and that kind of intimacy, the connotation, but then also he has something for us to do, some assignment for us in the world that only probably we can do, like one specific thing that only you can do. God is that great to be able to be that specific and to know us that personally, to number the hairs on our heads and so on. So for us, calling is like a mystical thing. It's hearing the voice of God both say, I love you, I know you, I want you, and also say, I have something for you to do. It's that connotation of like purpose or significance. And dude, I mean, are there two more important things to the human soul or psyche than those two? To say you're known and loved and you have purpose. You're not insignificant. You know, there's something that your life is meant to accomplish in the world that makes the world somehow better. And no one can do it but you. I just think those two things are extraordinary.
Yeah, and those are like, so the intimacy piece is the piece that the world doesn't get, like the world can't grasp, because like they see the purpose, like they see the outworkings of what God is doing, but they don't see the God doing it, right? So
even feeling like, okay, I love this job, or I think I'm called to be a teacher or something. Actually, can you really experience, or can you really know your calling, your true calling, without a relationship with God? Right. In other words, without the one who knows you perfectly. So I just don't know if you can even use the word in its truest sense without a connection to Jesus, without a connection to the one who made you, you know?
Yeah. And that's a theme that I see over and over again as I was reading this, is the return to the heart of it being relationship, and like, how can we talk about calling without talking about the caller, right? Like that. So I'm like, wow, that's really profound stuff in here. Another thing that you pull out of here, or you put into here that I'd like to pull out, is this understanding of a calling cycle. Actually, I think I'll show it real quick. You had a calling cycle where there's a thing that seems to have a repetitive nature in our lives, starting with an identity crisis, moving to intimacy, identity, assurance, and purpose and mission. Is that something? Now you talk about it a little bit, but maybe you can share briefly here. How often do you think individuals, once they begin to experience that first identity crisis, is that cycle usually kind of going, and what are some ways that they can recognize, people can recognize in their journey where they're at, you know, that next wave of the cycle?
Yeah, of course, I like the metaphor of creation. You know, the whole book is really, you know, built on that framework, that if God creates the world in 6 days, 6 periods of time, you know, he takes his time. The creation of the world is a process. Somehow one thing builds upon another. It's a culmination into the creation of men and women in whom he puts his image. And you know, okay, so if I think about my life or your life as something which is an act of creation, an act of creativity, both of God and of us, then we can think of it as maybe 6 days, you know, and so, you know, typically when we think of like, I had an identity crisis, or I'm like, who am I? What am I meant to do in the world? We think of a young person, you know, in their 20s or something, or maybe even in college or something, just thinking like, what am I supposed to do with my life? Like, who am I, God? You know, and the truth is that I think that experience of a crisis of identity, who am I? And that probably comes out of leaving home, the big transition of like, I'm on my own now. Who am I now? Do I, you know, if my parents raised me as a Christian, do I still believe that? What do I believe? You know, if my parents didn't raise me with faith, do I want to have faith? I mean, the thrill of freedom, you know, and I think what that does is that makes us ask those deep questions about like, who am I really, and what am I meant to do in the world? Is there something that I'm meant to do in the world? And if you're a believer, if you have a relationship with Jesus, that drives you into relationship with him. It drives you you turn to him to answer the question.
Yeah.
Right. And then out of that place, I think you get answers, or you get a sense of maybe who you are and then what you're meant to do. But I think what I'm saying is that doesn't just happen once in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just happen in your early 20s and then you're done. You know, he told you this is what you're supposed to be, a teacher, and then that's it. I'll see you in heaven. You know, that's the end of the conversation. You know, that just isn't how it's worked out for me and for hundreds of people that I've worked with or counseled in terms of their calling and their mission. Instead, it seems to me like about every 12 years. So if you think of a human life, 72 years, let's just pick that number because that's about the median age. 72 years, you're looking at these 6 major transitions then, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, and then 72. And if you think of those like as major transitions or moments of major transition, then you realize what happens in those transitions is the same thing that happened when you were 20. You're going, who am I? Right? So I don't know, you're something horrible like a terrible diagnosis or a divorce or your kids leave home or something, and you're looking at yourself going, who am I now? Or you lose a major job, or you get a major promotion, or you sell your company, or whatever. These things happen to us, and then we find ourselves standing there feeling exactly like we felt when we were young, thinking, man, who am I now? And God, and so again, if you have a relationship with Jesus, you turn to him. So that's what that cycle is. You go back to intimacy. He speaks to you probably about who you are before what you're meant to do. And then there's this renewal. It's like a dawn breaks, a renaissance of your life, and you feel like you felt when you were 20. But you're not going to feel that unless you go through the darkness of the evening and then the morning. So in between the days of creation, right, you have and it was evening and it was morning, the third day, the second day, whatever. And so in that darkness, in that place of unknowing, in that place of silence, that can be quite, it creates a crisis, right? So it makes you feel like, wait, I don't know who I am. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what to do now. I don't know what's next.
Lost for a moment. Yeah.
You're lost. Yeah. That kind of dark night of the soul. And I'm saying that happens about 6 times in your life. And so that's perfectly normal, perfectly good, because it drives you back into the place of prayer, and you can come out of it into the next day, the next kind of season of your life with the same kind of zeal, the same kind of youthfulness, the same kind of wonder that you had when you were young.
That's so good, man. And one of the things that I really loved about just the opening chapters, the general premise of this was the progressive, the evolutionary or whatever nature of this, which I think for whatever reason felt like a new thought to me. Like I had never really looked at it that way. And as I look back and I see markings of those different identity crises and the revolving, of that, I then realized, oh, so that's what that was. And instead it felt like something was broken, and then now I have what's the true thing. And then it happened again. Now this is the true thing. And the reality was that like the culmination of that, round of the cycle, that was true. Like that was true. That was what God was doing in that season. And now you're on to the next day. And I think what that does for me is it gives me the freedom to continue to evolve and change, and not feel like once I felt like I've heard very clearly this is who I am, there's that inclusion of that word now on the end of it that was a new thought for me. So it's like, oh, so this is like in this season of life, in this day, so to speak, of life, this is who God's called me to be. And there will come another one that will look different. And so that was really good, a really good framework to help me even just think about my past and my journey with the Lord, and really wrestle with where I am now. So I appreciate that. So let's look real quick at the days. So you've got your framework, I got like this nice little snapshot from your book here, and you've got the 6 days of childhood, and then you call the next one servant, or actually maybe I'll do it this way. So you got childhood, adolescence, early career, mid-career, late career, and transition. Those are more of the age groupings. But then you talk about them in regards to the developmental concepts, the conditions, the threats, and then even the identity. So I was like, man, this is like a nice blending of just the human trajectory that you see kind of as you look at child psychology and child development, stuff, human development, as well as just thinking through the progression of, God calling his people. And that for me, as a guy who is coming from the education world, like, I'm like, oh, this is really, really speaking to me. So, I mean, let's look at day one. So day one, you called child. That's from 0 to 12. Yeah. So in day one, you talked about play and adventure, like adventure, I think really being the thing that what it kind of describes. Well, I guess the core concept was bonding, and adventure, I guess, was the way that they.
Did I come across as nervous as I actually
like
was?
That. But on page 46, you said something that I thought was really good, and I wonder if you can help us kind of.
As I'm watching this back, I'm like, oh, dude, yeah, you were nervous.
Shepherd young folks through this. It said, when Jesus says, "Let the children come," he might also be saying, "Let them explore the world as a place of adventure and not a place of restriction." And he said, in turn, when he says you must become like one of these little ones to enter the kingdom, he's saying, among other things, that what they are is enough. It may be the only time in our lives when what we are is all we need to be. I was like, dang, that's deep. Like that hit deep. And I think going back to the first line of that, of it being a place where they need to explore the world as an adventure and not a place of restriction. I can't go back to when I was a child, but now as a parent and having children, and even wanting to help shepherd some of my people through that, like what are some thoughts that you might have on how we can shepherd young people through that well, without it being an overly restrictive environment, but like you talk about it being a place of their need, that we don't think, or they don't think about safety,
me to
but
be asking him to give parenting advice,
like think about their vulnerability, So how do we walk through that?
Well, and a lot of it, I mean, I've raised 6 kids. A lot of our concern about safety and security is really more about our fears than it is about a real reflection on the world. I'm not saying there aren't actual dangers. Of course there are. And what we want to do is essentially walk that line with our kids of giving them a sense that the world is a place to be explored, that isn't a place that's going to destroy them or harm them, but a place of discovery without actually putting them in real danger. So essentially it's like, how do we simulate danger, which is what play is. That's what play is. So that's why it's so important. I mean, I think the most important thing that kids are doing essentially is bonding with people, that they're forming bonds with each other, with their parents, with the people around them. And they do that primarily through play. And play is a belief that the world is a place of joy. Play is one of the only things, in fact, I think it is the only thing that human beings do whose only purpose is joy. Like there's no other reason to do it except for just sheer joy. So there's so much of what happens to us, or what should happen to us as healthy kids, is foundational to everything else in our lives. Which is why I think it's important that even to think like a child has a calling, like what, that's a bit much. Like it's a put all that pressure on them. Except when you think the calling that God has for every child is simply to be a child. Right. And what restricts that, what damages them, is when we ask them to be something else. When we expect them to be experts at something, or savants, or we expect them to be, all-stars in the baseball league, or we expect them to to be a parent to a broken family, or a parent to a sibling because their family's in tatters, or a dad to a mom who doesn't have a father figure in the household, or a mother, vice versa, whatever. It's that sort of rushing them out of childhood. That's often where we get ourselves in trouble, and where a lot of us are still trying to get healing, all these years later, because we actually weren't just allowed to be kids. We weren't allowed to just be children and to play and to find the world as a place that's full of wonder and joy and love and people as something good, not people as something threatening. So obviously abuse, neglect, those things become fundamental destroyers of childhood, because it just doesn't let us be who God has called us to be before the age of 12, which is just to be kids. And then the whole idea of culmination, like you kind of alluded to, I think that's really important, because it's not like when you're a child, if you can really learn that lesson that I am a child, that you abandon that. So I would say day 2 is becoming a student, and then day 3 is becoming a servant. So, but it's not like in day 3 you're no longer a child. You hold on to those big lessons of each of these days of your life. You continue. I mean, I'm in day 5, and I still understand myself as a child of God, right? That's fundamental to who I am. But I also understand myself as a student, as a lifelong learner, something I learned in day 2. And I still understand myself as a servant, something I learned in day 3, and as a creator or maker that I learned in day 4. And I'm discovering now this sort of mentor role in day 5. But it's not like you lose them or you switch out like, well, I'm not that anymore. So I'm not a child anymore. Now I'm an adult. Even that's not quite right. We hold on to these identities and we build on them.
Yeah.
So like a healthy psyche holds on to the lessons of each of these days.
Nice. So you started talking a little bit about day 2. So day 2, you said that's the student, right? And so that's from 12 to 24. Now, day 12 or day 2, I think for a lot of people in regards to faith is where things really start to get real, and there's all the questions that are being wrestled with. Before we get into the depths of the understanding of calling in day 2, I wonder for you, if I can just ask you personally, in your story, where and what was it in day 2 that you began to wrestle with your faith and discover, or was it maybe even day 1 or somewhere later?
Yeah, it would have been. So I kind of had a broken home, and when my dad left, I was probably 13 and 12, 13, something like that. And I just thought, well, I'm the man of the house now. So for some reason, I thought if you were a good man, you went to church. So I would ride my bike to this little Presbyterian church down the street and on Sundays and just sit there. And I had no idea what people were saying, what was going on. But I just sit in the back and try to be, whatever. And it was there that I probably started thinking about these things, and met a good youth worker, and was invited to be a part of Young Life, and that's probably where I heard the gospel at 13. And so yeah, I think for me, the beginning of my conversion, my surrender would have been in day 2 for sure. Yeah, and day 2 is full of questioning, right? So and adolescence, which gets such a hard rap, because adolescents are so they're just so unformed, right? They're testing everything. They're testing the assumptions that everyone has and themselves, and everything is up for grabs, right? But again, I would see that as a very good thing, and I'd see it as something actually God is calling the adolescent to do, to test the world, to question the world. Now, you can do that in a sinful way or a godly way, and adolescents get it wrong all the time, as we all do in each day. But actually, the questioning of things is really perfectly appropriate, for the adolescent. And as I mentioned, there's a sort of neurological reality here that the formation of our prefrontal cortex, that executive function that actually contains wisdom and makes good decisions and can take into consideration the past, the present, and the future. That executive function, that prefrontal cortex of our brain, is not actually fully formed until about 24, 25 years old. Right. So day 2 is like, it's not that we have brain damage, but it's like our brains are not done, man. So just like go easy on the teenager, because the teenagers are doing exactly what God wants them to do, which is ask questions, to touch the world, to figure out what the world is and how it works. And some of that is sexuality, some of that is physicality, it's physiological, it's puberty, it's all that. It's shame and awkwardness and confusion about relationships and all that stuff. But some of the pressure that maybe teenagers feel that's put on them by us is to maybe have themselves together too soon, or to have answers that they probably shouldn't have yet. So even though I did have kind of a faith moment in day 2, it probably wasn't until college that I really understood myself as a real disciple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I resonate with that actually. For me, I grew up in the church, and a different version of a broken home, I'm sure. But one thing that was a mainstay was my mom, my grandmother, we were going to church every Sunday. And so I always had, the preaching of the gospel in my background, in my context, but it never really became real for me until many years later. But I remember early on, there was a general understanding of who God was, and that, I want to be, in relationship, but I didn't get that, and I didn't know how to pursue that. And as a result of the lack of submission for me, like, I just spent years of rebelling against this God that I thought I wanted. And I wonder, you talk about in day 2, you talk about we all need a sin stories. I'm looking at page 63. We all need a sin story to be able to hear the gospel. And how as parents, it's counterintuitive. You said if we do not allow our kids the room to make serious choices, they can't fail in those choices, and therefore can't fully appreciate the grace of God. You said that the key is to be there for our kids in that existential crisis of sin and failure. Now, without getting too deep, but I do like to ask real questions. You just shared about how you kind of were you had a broken home, and in the midst of your day 2, you're now like feeling like you're the man of the family. What were some of the places specifically where maybe the implications of what you're saying showed up for you, about maybe there being or not being someone there for you in that existential crisis? And were there certain figures that were really, instrumental, and that sort of thing?
It's cool. Yeah, I don't often get asked these questions about myself. I mean, probably for me there was an external kind of crisis about sin and an internal one as well. But the external one was really about abuse. I had an abusive dad, and the desperation that creates. Like, I need peace. I need a place to go where I can not be afraid or whatever. Not live in kind of under that constant sense of anxiety and fear, that creates. And he wasn't the worst case, and by the way, he is like a devoted believer now.
Praise God. Wow.
Totally. Yeah. But those were rough years. And I think so that drove me to God in a certain way. Like, I felt afraid and alone and threatened constantly. So to turn to a loving father, this idea of a loving father, which I always really gravitated to. I never questioned that. I never thought, I often thought, to kind of have a broken relationship with your dad, sometimes you can think maybe God is like that. I just never did. I always thought, I'm sure God is not like that. He's probably the opposite of that. And then an internal sin story, which probably had more to do with girls, to look for intimacy, to look for, like, I just always had to have a girlfriend. I always had to be in a relationship with a girl, but I couldn't keep one for longer than probably a month, you know. And then just to pour yourself into that so much, to have this like intense, you know, psychologically intense relationship with somebody, and then move on to the next person, and to constantly need that, and to come to the end of my rope, probably my sophomore year of college, so maybe 19, and just like breaking down and realizing like I cannot manage my own life. It's, you know, I'm a bad leader of my own life, my own heart, my own future, and to really surrender. So that's a different kind of desperation, which is my own sin, my own sort of, you know, yes, there's a brokenness outside around me, but that brokenness was also inside me.
Yeah. I love the way that you even labeled that realization, because it so resonates with what I experienced 2008, when I truly surrendered to the Lord. You said you realized that you were a bad leader of your life, and like that was, and I think that made it easier for me to submit and surrender then, because it's like I had history of, yeah, that's what I do. And nope. So what do you got? You know?
I'm like, Lord, you can take a shot at this. It's got to be better than what I'm doing.
Absolutely. So, and it sounds like for you that was in the tail end of your day 2 journey, somewhere in that student, maybe not completely at the end, but somewhere towards the back half of that.
Yep. So
then we got day 3. And you described that as the servant, and that's from ages 24 to 36. And a lot of that you have is characterized as, you know, serving, and you're submitting, and the ideal context or whatever for that is a challenge. One of the quotes I loved in here, which, I mean, it might not be the one that's maybe at the most core of this chapter, but I really wanted to talk about it for a moment. It's actually kind of a little paragraph starting in 73. He said, just because this is an unremarkable time, you know, commenting on the season of, it's not about you, it's serving, it's submitting. Just because it's an unremarkable time, not worth adding to the Acts narrative, does not imply unimportance. On the contrary, something happened in that time which prepared Paul not only for some incredibly brave missionary work, but also for the theological revelation and spiritual maturity he would need to be worthy of such an assignment. Perhaps we all need a period of being unremarkable before we are ready to do something worthy of remark. I thought that like so profound, and I would have never like signed up for that, you know, at that stage. You'd be like, yes, give me the period of unremarkable acts, you know. But it now, you know, seeing myself in day 4 and looking back on it's so profound and so true, and so necessary. And I wonder, like, for you, we'll get to you in a second, but I wonder for leaders that are trying to shepherd people in a day 3, especially in the context that we find ourselves in the micro church, you know, spaces. Let me put it this way: I think it's probably a really easier thing in my experience to help people journey through day 3 in a lot of the prevailing models of church, because there's so much of a suppressive and oppressive nature of the power and all those structures that make it where it's not even culturally normative for you to be trying to, you know, push forward what is in you, but it's really a lot about just laying down your your own giftedness even. How can we, in spaces like this that I find myself in, where there's a lot of conversation around exploring, you know, their gifts and exploring their calling, exploring what God's put in them, and asking them to bring that out. How can we also at the same time really help shepherd them in that season, when they're in that season of serving and submitting, and you know, you understand what the question I'm trying to ask?
I don't know if that made any sense.
The problem is we just can't know. We just don't have enough information about ourselves at 25 to know what this mark we're meant to make on the world is. And there's just way too much pressure put on the person coming out of college, for example, or in their early 20s, to know the whole trajectory of their career in life. And I just think that's crazy. It's just not helpful to those people. And even these kind of like hero stories, you know, Mark Zuckerberg or something, you know, making his $1 billion company idea at 23 or something. It's just, that's not real. That's not how the world really works. There are stories like that, but they're anomalies, you know, they're outliers. What happens is we need time to figure out who we are. You know, this Bobby Clinton's idea that first question you ask in your life is, who am I? And in your 20s, you should be asking the question, who actually am I? Before I ask the second question, which I think is in your late 30s, which is like, what contribution am I meant to make in the world?
Right.
And if you rush that other question, and then the other issue is character. It's like, so if you are meant to be some great leader or make some big impact in the world, but are you a horrible person? You know, do you actually have the foundation of integrity, of honesty, of love, of you know, humility to carry that? And bro, have we not seen in our time a dozen stories of super Christian leaders who were actually rushed into big platforms in their 20s before they had the character to handle that kind of influence or leadership, and it destroyed them. And it destroyed other people too along the way. So character formation cannot be rushed. It just cannot be rushed. It can't. So I'm not saying we should submit in our 20s because submission, biblical submission, so big ministries can just like abuse people by getting them all to submit. We submit because we have to learn to follow before we lead, because we have to learn to be on team before we can be people that call people into teams or lead teams. The leadership to me should come after character formation. And because you conflate that with the question of like, who actually am I? I'm not exactly sure yet. I don't really know what I'm good at and what I'm bad at. So you're just talking about skill acquisition. You're talking about gifts. You're talking about like personality, propensities, you know, just like taste, you know, desire, like certain things you like to do, certain things you don't like to do, but you don't know that yet. So really what you need your 20s for and your early 30s, in my opinion, is to just try as many things as you possibly can. And so to get yourself in a healthy organization, whether it's church or outside the church or whatever, a good company that will, you know, give you lots of room to try lots of things, that asks you to do lots of different kinds of jobs. And you should want to say yes to every possible thing, even if you find yourself not being great at it. Because what I'm saying is by the time you're in your mid 30s, you start to really understand, okay, I think I know who I am now. I think I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I think I know what I'm going to stop doing. And I think I know where I'm going to double down and really make my mark in the world. And so you're ready in terms of like the knowledge of yourself, but you're also ready. Then you've got a good decade of like submitting, of being a good teammate, of being a good soldier, of being somebody who could follow someone else's vision and not always agree with it, but go along, you know, follow. And I'm telling you, you can tell the difference between people who sit on teams or people who lead teams who were themselves good followers, who understand they have been someone themselves who was under submission. It's that the story of the centurion who comes to Jesus, who Jesus says, I've not seen faith like this in all of Israel. And this, I'm somebody who's been under authority, and I'm somebody that's had authority, and I just know how it works. So I see you as someone with authority, so I know you can just tell my servant to be well and they'll be well. Right. It's like you don't really understand how authority works until you've been under authority. And unless you just become like a bad person, abusive, a person that's going to take authority and hurt people with it, or or it's going to manipulate people for your own ends if you think that's what authority is. And the truth is, I just don't know that any of us are capable at 24, 25 of handling that kind of power. I think it's so dangerous to us. And it may take a while to mature itself, that evil, that kind of, festering. But I just don't know very many people that can survive it.
We are going to stop the interview there, but it continues and it gets betterer and betterer. That was my intentional bad English, Mom, if you're watching. But so much in just that first half of it that we watched there, Jaria. Were there any specific things that kind of stood out to you as remarkable or worth comment?
Like I mentioned previously, the character before the platforming, I felt like that was just right on par with our previous discussion and so important. But also, what really the whole part about, I wrote it down, letting your kids explore as the world as adventurous and not as a place of restriction. And I just felt so convicted because I feel like my child, I feel like I was allowed to play. I was allowed to be a child. And I can't say anything bad about my childhood. It was so great. But I feel like when I became a parent, I'm like, oh, nope, that's bad over here. That's bad. Nope. You don't get to do those things.
Right.
And so I think I've gotten better with each child, like easing up on that. But I think Jordan would agree. Like there was a lot of restriction, no play. And then just speaking into their lives and letting them know that they are enough. I do feel like that is extremely important, especially nowadays for kids, because there's so many messages. And I know I see that just on social media. I have to get myself off because it's like, oh, you're enough, but you also need to be this and that and this and that and this. And then for kids, especially because they have a lot of their peers that are involved in these things, this thing, that thing. And they're like, well, I don't do any of those things. So you're just enough. Whatever you're doing, it's enough. And go play.
And I love that part too. And that when he said it, it was, or when I read it, it was so profound because, in each one of the other days of this, each one of the levels of calling, the purpose is, something else. Like there's you need to do this and accomplish that and achieve this. And healthy versions of that. But like the accomplishment for the children is joy. You know what I mean?
Man, that sounds great.
Right. It's like, dang. No wonder Jesus keeps telling us to engage with the kingdom like a child. He's calling us to live lives of joy. Right? That's at the heart of what Freedom Story Media is all about. We want to inspire you to live a life of freedom and joy. So it's like understanding, that God's foundational calling for us is that we are enough and to just experience the joy in him. And the we are enough doesn't change. It's a constant. You are always enough. And then as we mature, it's like, okay, now in your enoughness, there are things that I'm calling you to do. It doesn't mean that you only become something when you accomplish that. But like now you have work to do. And I think to piggyback off of a thing that you even said about how it was very appropriate, the conversation around character with all that we've talked about in this episode, and I wonder the quote I pulled out about having the season of unremark, where there aren't things that you're doing about. Like I wonder if that was something that was taken from Driscoll. And I wonder if we go back into his story, if we even look all the way back to his day one, if he was not rushed out of childhood and into manhood, And that's why so much of his ministry was like calling men to grow up and be men. I think because he was called to grow up sooner than maybe he should have been. And so as a result, he rushed day 1, right? And then he rushed day 2, and now he's already into the season of creating when he should have been in the season of serving, so that he would develop the humility and the character necessary to sustain a ministry in the creation.
Yeah.
Man. Perhaps. No, but I think that is so good. Like, I felt like he didn't realize it, but as I was reading it, I was seeing so much of this, at least the front half of it, of like, this is really gold for parenting. You know what I mean? Of like helping your children as they're going through those different stages. And then day 3, I wish I had read for myself when I was in my 20s, and like, okay, there is this sense of submission. And I look back and I'm grateful now, as I even contemplate on it, for the season that I spent submitting to another pastor's vision. And like, even though I felt like, oh, but I wish we were doing this, it was like, no, this is healthy. This is good that I'm laying down where I'm feeling like I should be for the sake of that. And because I don't normally like pat myself on the back really much. I'm really good at finding all the places where I'm doing things poorly.
Yeah.
But when he said the line about like, you can tell when a leader has submitted to somebody else before, like, I was like, oh man, I hope that's true about me.
Yeah, it is.
Because I know what it's like to be that submitted one. You know what I mean? And like, I want to make sure that experience goes well for you. Oh man. But you guys, this was a great book.
Yeah.
You can see I got all these like post-it notes and highlightings in here. The interview continues to be phenomenal, especially if you're someone who's in like a day 4 or a day 5. So that means like maybe you're in your mid to late 30s to early 40s, or mid 40s to late 40s and 50s. Once you get to the part that relates to where you're at, it gets really good. And you're like, ooh, especially if you're reading the book. So I want to encourage you, hit the links in the description, because you'll find the link to the whole interview. Finish that, and then you'll probably be more encouraged to go get the entire book. And I have links to not only where you can get the book on Amazon, but if you're somebody who likes audios, there's Audible you can check out. And if you maybe do a lot of reading and stuff, you might want to check out Scribd, which is the service that I use. I have the referral link in the description as well. You can, if you use that link, get Scribd for 60 days for free. So that means you can read this book, or actually they don't have the audio yet, but they have the audio of this book on there. You can read so many different books in a matter of time, and it's not like Audible where you get one book, or Amazon where you get one book, but you can have all of those for 60 days, and after that it's like $9.95 a month, I want to say, or maybe it's $8.99. I don't know. It's like $9-10 a month. I don't care, because I love it, so I'm gonna pay it. But if you guys do use it, it would actually help us out here, and that becomes a discount on the service that I use for it. So check that out. And any final thoughts, comments you got, Jariel, before we sign off?
No, I think it was a good one. We've agreed to disagree on Morbius, but you'll come around.
We'll see. I'll watch it again. And hey, good job, Jariel, of persevering through the technical difficulties. I can't wait to watch this one back to see what it looked like to everybody else, because I had my own version of the experience.
I know you were like, ah!
Oh man, I'm going through it, and like I missed half of what you said for a couple of different things. I'm like, well, I'm sure she said something great.
Like, okay, we'll see.
And you guys, this is the season 2 finale. So we're actually going to be taking a break, and we're going to have some content over the summer, maybe an episode of 2 of a summer special. We're still kind of working on putting those together, but this will not be back here in a couple weeks, but we will let you know when the next one's coming. However, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to continue to bring you guys content. I'll probably drop in another 5 by the Fire episode or 2. Like, if you already didn't check it out, you can check out the episode that launched, that was live earlier today, where I gave you guys about a 10-minute devotional. So we'll be getting some of those here and there. So subscribe, like, share it with a friend, do all of that business. Make sure you guys let us know your thoughts on Morbius and all that stuff in the comments if you haven't already. And yeah, I guess we'll see y'all next time.
All right.
Sound good? All right.
Yeah.
All right, bye, y'all.
Bye.